question that we want to talk about is around housing and home. And one of the questions that I think a lot of us are facing these days, especially those of us that have made our homes in cities, are the potential of having to move or having to change your housing situation. And if you are in a situation where your income is down and you're feeling a lot of stress, feeling like you have to, or you might have to in the future, look to change your housing situation. And there's a lot of reasons why you might be facing that question. Maybe it's a good reason. Maybe it's because you realize that you could do your job from farther away and you're looking to kind of get out of the city and this is the right time. Or maybe it's the last thing you want to be thinking about right now. And yet the decision is being pushed in front of you in a really real way. It's a really difficult thing. So financially, the things that will help to look at are first, yet again, looking at where you are right now. So I don't think we always fully understand what our housing costs are. We kind of take mortgage or rent and we just assume that's the cost of our housing. And it might be for some of you. But one of the things we talked about in the first video, finding your financial footing, was just getting into your numbers a little bit. And so if you need some help diving into that, refer back to those first videos. But for housing, really looking at what's the total cost of your housing. If you're a renter, that might be rent, maybe plus condo fees if you pay extra for that, or maybe it's plus utilities. All of these things to be like, what's the total amount that I pay on my housing? Make sure you're looking at that full number. If you own, it gets a little bit trickier, right? But I want you to look at the full context: mortgage, property tax, utilities, insurance, maintenance, the oft ignored amount that you need to spend just kind of keeping your house up. It's a really helpful thing when you're trying to figure out what's the cost of moving and what you can afford and what's actually saving you money when you know where you are right now. So that's the first thing I would encourage you to do. The next thing is looking at what you might be moving toward. So what is a situation that you can imagine yourself being in? That's tough. It's just something that might just be starting to let yourself imagine a little bit where you might be going. So for renters, it might be, okay, what does the next step look like for you? Is there a place that with a friend or family that you can stay? Is that what it is? Or do you need to find another place that you're paying rent in? Perhaps you're paying rent with family as well. But just saying, okay, is it with somebody else? Is it on your own? What do you need or what would you prefer? So getting a sense of that situation and then looking at what the cost might be, but making sure you're again comparing the real cost to what the cost is right now. And you're not just kind of using top numbers to assume, and really thinking through that. Another element to think about here is location a little bit. Are there extra costs that come from living in a different place? So rent might be cheaper outside of the city that you live, but if there is work, if you're still planning to work inside the city, is there an extra transportation cost? Is there a need for a car all of a sudden that there wasn't before? Okay, well, look up some of those numbers. What would that include? It's just going to give you a more holistic picture. I think a lot of us have this instinct of numbers that we're not looking at. And that's why when you look at the top numbers, we have like just, it doesn't feel satisfying. It doesn't feel right. And we're still really stressed. I promise you, this is a little bit like when we talked about debt and the monster under the bed again. The clearer the picture you can draw of this, even if it's more overwhelming, the better you're going to be able to make this decision. If you're an owner, there's a bit more, well, surprise, there's a whole bunch more things to think about. So not only do we have to look at what is the cost of being in another place or renting, so really looking at what the full cost of your life is, but also making sure you're taking into account the cost of selling. So note that when you're selling, often there are lots of closing costs. So when I'm estimating things for clients, I will often use a conservative 7% of the sales cost to cover all the things that you need to. So real estate agent commission, lawyer fees, all these kind of things. That's going to change from person to person, but even if you're back of the napkin in it, just remember that's a thing. Think about moving costs, and remember always when you're looking to sell that you have to live somewhere. And so don't look at just the sales price and, oh, I could end up with a chunk of money. Where do you live after that? Is it buying another place? What does that look like? There are lots of things to work through here, but just imagining and starting to build some numbers around the things that you're thinking about is going to help you see what's possible and what's maybe not possible. So just building out those numbers is going to be a really helpful tool for when you have to make that choice. Now, who to talk to, who can help you figure some of this stuff out? That's a little bit tricky. So let's start with the sellers if you own right now. Talking to a real estate agent can be really helpful for you in your area to get a sense of what you might be able to sell for, again, what closing costs might be. Here we run to that situation again to make sure that whoever you're working with can explain very clearly how they get paid and what you would end up with at the end of the day. So that's a really important thing. If you're looking to buy another place, you might want to talk to a mortgage broker as well to just say, can I do this? What is this looking like? Where do my finances kind of fit into my options? How am I limited here? And what do I need to be thinking about? And another really good thing to think about, which isn't in the financial professional side, is that moving home often is not a decision that one makes on their own. It's often connected to other people. If you live with somebody, family, friends, however that is, that's going to affect them. And so there's a conversation to be had there. Perhaps you just live near family and friends. That's a conversation that affects them as well. So starting to have the conversation with the people that it affects as well is something you can do to start the ball rolling, and somebody that can maybe help you imagine a little bit what the next step might be and to kind of figure out what some of these numbers might be. But starting those conversations now instead of the day before you feel like you have to make the decision is going to give you some more information in order to figure out what your next step may be.
We want to also, I just want to interject and say that while Chris is talking about this idea of possibly moving and looking at your financial situation in terms of your home, we get that I want you to think about this notion of home. We know that there's an added element to this, that for some, this is a very, very heavy question, thinking about home, and that it's not just numbers, that it can, and maybe you haven't thought of this, but I know for some, it could possibly, weigh on an individual's sense of identity, sense of success. It creates, especially right now during the pandemic, a place of comfort, a place of refuge, a place that you come to stay away from what's out there, the outdoors. It's scary out there for some. This place of home could also mean, where do you fit in the world? What does that mean? And it could be an extension of yourself. So I'm just adding that other element, that we understand that it's not while it's not an easy decision to look at the financial side of it, there's a whole other side that really ties into your well-being, your mental well-being, your overall well-being, your sense of identity, your place in the world, and how you connect to others. And yeah, I know that's kind of heavy, but we kind of just want to, we want to say that we understand.
And I think we want to encourage you too to not leave that off the balance sheet. Like, that stuff matters. And so it was something that I find is sometimes really helpful when you're trying to figure out, okay, one, why am I stuck? If you feel stuck, why am I stuck? What are the resistances there? And really saying, what are the things that come to my brain? Writing those down. It's an old school technique, but it really, really helps. Write down the resistances, but also write down the things that you love about your home. Both the practical, it might be location, or it might be warmth, it might be community, it might be safety. Note those things, because these are the things that you also want to include on the balance sheet between this and where you're going. And what's the most important thing that you want to try to kind of continue consistently in your idea of home? It's not just numbers that is gathering information. It's also these things that by putting them in front of you, it gives you something to think about and something to mull over, and a prism to kind of focus your thoughts and choices through when you're looking to make these tough decisions. The last big question we want to talk about is about how we make money. One of the biggest stressors, I don't know, Christine, like it has to be one of the biggest things that we hear these days is just people can't make money the way that they did and the way that they want to. And even if it was hard before, it's much harder now. And for those of you that income was really, you were making good income, some of it has dried up completely from multiple sources. And so this idea of being like, how do I make money? And how long do I wait for theater to come back, for film to come back, for music to come back? We don't know. This is one of the questions that I find the hardest. And there are things that can help, but spoiler, I think that they're quite unsatisfying to the scope of the question. But we still wanted to talk about it a little bit. And so financially, the things that I think can help when you're facing these big decisions about how long can I be patient, or what kind of work do I need to be looking for, or do I change everything about my life and do something completely different? Because if you're anything like me, these are all things that you're thinking about these days. The first thing that helps is knowing what you need. Back to your numbers. So we went kind of through this in more detail in the first video of finding your financial footing, but honestly, it really, really helps. Income is such a question mark for most of us all the time, even more so now. So getting a sense of what do I need right now, looking at a really clear monthly, yearly, business-wise, what do I need to be bringing in, is going to give you a sense of how much of a problem am I trying to solve? Instead of saying these things that we say so often, is like, I just need to make more. I just need to have enough. We have two unsolvable problems there. What we want to try to do is create an actual problem to solve so that we can know what kind of work would fit into that. So getting a clear sense of your expenses is really, really helpful. And then looking at how to fill that need. So once you build that need, say you need an average of $3,000, $4,000 a month. What's available to fill that need? So the first thing we can look to is the government benefit side right now. So for a lot of us, for the last 6 months, CERB has been there to provide kind of a foundation to our monthly finances. That's changing right now, but it's not leaving us with a complete vacuum. So the government is introducing something for those of us. They're kind of moving the support to the EI system. So for those of you that have worked in a job that has paid into EI and may qualify for EI, you might be getting moved into the EI, normal EI with a few changes, track. For those of you that are self-employed and don't qualify for EI, you're not being left completely alone. So they've introduced something called the Canada Recovery Benefit, so CRB. They took out the E, they left you with the rest of it. How the general idea of this works. So if you have not returned to work due to COVID-19, or your income has dropped by at least 50%, and they're looking at net income here, you may be eligible for this. And what it is a $500 per week benefit for up to 26 weeks. That's the general sense of it. Now, they've made it a little bit more complicated, and we're waiting for new information all the time. So right now, as a recording of this, we have some basic information about it, but I'm sure that this will continue to get refined as we go. So please keep an eye on the sources, and on the AFC website, we're going to have a section that kind of helps clarify some of these things for you. But so that you know, if when you file your taxes next year, you make more in net income than $38,000, they're going to start clawing back some of this benefit, this CRB benefit. So basically, with every dollar that you make over $38,000, they're going to take back 50 cents of this benefit. I know that's a tricky thing to figure out, how you might qualify and where you might fall in. So if you generally think you might be in that bracket, if that kind of falls with your normal income making, talk to somebody about that, get a sense of what you might be paying back and how to prepare for that. If you're generally under that, it might not be something you need to think about, but just to be aware of right now. This benefit exists. If you want more information and to see if you're eligible for it, I recommend that you call the EI call center. We'll leave the number below this video so you can know who to call and just get your specific situation down there. Do I qualify? How does this work? What can I expect? What do I need to look at when I'm kind of heading into next year's taxes? And really get a good sense. After that, looking at your need, look to see what's left over. So if you're getting that $2,000 a month from the CRB, but you need $3,000, you have a $1,000 problem. How can you solve that? How have you solved that in the past? What are some of the jobs that have been? What could you maybe expect from them? Are any of them working right now? What this will help do is just give you a sense of whether this is a solvable problem with the resources you have, or whether a big shift is needed. If you've got a $4,000 a month problem, you'll feel that. I'm sure you're feeling that from a day-to-day level. But it may take a bigger shift, whether it's on the expense side, looking at a major shift like decreasing your debt carrying costs that we've talked about earlier in this video or in a previous section if you're watching the shortened videos, or maybe changing a big expense like housing or something, or on the income side, but it'll give you a sense of what the gap is. That's a tool you can give yourself. Even though you can't make somebody say yes, you can't bring back the film industry faster, but it'll give you a sense of what you need to be aiming to bring in from month to month. So you're not just feverishly trying to take in any income as much as possible and never knowing if you're getting even close to breaking even. It's not enough, but it's something that you can give yourself in this really tricky situation. But income, not unlike home, and you're saying, Christine, it's not that simple. It's not really just a math problem, is it?
No. And if you've been watching this video since the beginning, you'll see this through line where I'm connecting your identity to this. I mean, I get it. Your job has created a sense of identity for some people. And it is this, your place in the world, how you see yourself within this world. And I know even thinking about possibly applying for this benefit, the CRB, or possibly going out and getting another job, if this is something you're thinking about, these are heavy questions. I get that. That's a really heavy question. Do you wait and see where things go, or do you apply for the CRB, you go out and get another job? This really is a heavy weighted question in the notion of who you are and your sense of success. And even, again, your comfort. Are you comfortable making these decisions and these choices? As well as how, an extension of self. How do you see yourself? How do people around you perceive you? Have they always seen you in this way? And it's scary to think about the other side. And unfair. It's okay to feel that way. I think it's...
Sorry, Christine, I was just going to say that it's hard enough making those kind of facing those things not in a pandemic. It's hard enough when you choose it. I know that both of us have walked a version of this path as well, as far as like balancing creativity and something else. And that's a hard enough thing to go through without being forced to go through it. And it's a difficult thing to wrestle with. I didn't expect it to be quite as hard as it was when I was choosing to kind of add another element to my career. But being forced on it, I can only imagine how difficult that is. It's part of it. But I think in the same way as we were talking about with home, it's the more you can name those things for yourself and kind of externalize some of those resistances, just so you can see them in black and white as opposed to a swirling sense of color in the back of your brain. Externalize those things. And one thing that helped me a lot was just really thinking about, why did I like doing this work? And where can I find some of that in the little things that I do other than this? And I'm not talking about we don't all have to make giant life changes. You may be there, you may not be there, but just trying to say, like, I miss creativity, I miss community, I miss spontaneity. How can you find a spark of that in some work, whether it's wherever it is? That might be an interesting way to think about things as well, and something that should make the balance sheet.
Mm-hmm. I know, even just for myself, talking from a personal perspective, this video has probably brought up different emotions and different thoughts. And I just want to thank you. We both want to thank you for taking this journey with us. And I want to remind you, as I spoke about in the first and the second video, is that stress and anxiety is a normal part of daily living, and learning how to manage that and these different emotions that have possibly have come up throughout this video. It takes trial and error, and below I will link some resources and some ideas. One that I actually just learned about that I thought I would share, and it's called 7-11 breathing. And what that is you breathe in for 7 counts, and then you breathe out for 11. It's an easy thing to remember. It's a great tool to think about. You can shut off this video, throw on some tunes and dance it out or sing it out. I love coloring or Sudoku. That's another way. I just want you to not forget about checking in with yourself, not only through this video or when you're talking about a topic such as finances, but throughout the day. Self-care is so important, especially right now during the pandemic. Taking care of yourself, or, you may be not just living alone, you may be living with your family, you may be living with a roommate, but taking care of yourself is going to make you able to care for others and to be able to take these challenges that you're facing on a day-to-day basis, or those difficult decisions that you're making on a second-by-second basis, a little bit easier. Just be kind to yourself and be patient. We also want to link you to below, just to look below. We're going to have, there's some information regarding the AFC, Chris's information. We urge you to reach out to both of us if you have any questions, and stay safe. Wash your hands, wear a mask. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Chris. Thank you.
Exclamation point. Thank you so much.